Hello and a warm welcome to our special report. Land is an important ingredient for any economic growth, but its forceful acquisitions in India over the last few years have unfolded a story of multitude of farmer protests, killing, depleting environment and political parties raising the pitch. Year 2013 and 14 saw two remarkable land bills, one as a proper legislation bearing the stamp of parliamentary approval and the other as an ordinance. Obviously, comparisons are being made between these two land bills as far as the farmer and the industry interests are concerned. But what's the real situation on the ground and whether at all the new land bill is tenable? Let's find out over the next 30 minutes. Amid thumping of tables, Parliament saw history unfolding in 2013. The Right to Fair Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act, popularly known as the Land Acquisition Act, was passed by Parliament. The law did something that never happened in the last 2 centuries. It aimed to regulate land acquisition, laying down rules for granting compensation, rehabilitation and resettlement to affected people. The Act came into force on January 1, 2014, but never got implemented. Exactly a year later, the NDA government brought in a land ordinance claiming that the move was ushered in to bring in balance between the interests of the farmers and the industry. Tables were turned upside down. The cycle of protests started and political parties smelt an opportunity to gain political mileage. Reeling under protests, they brought in amendments with a re-promulgated ordinance after proroguing the House.
By this act and by this amendment, we are not going to acquire land for private engineering college, private medical college, private educational institution, even for industry. We are giving exemption only for defense purpose, rural infrastructure, industrial corridor, affordable housing for the poor people. These are the things.
Despite assurances to the farmer groups that their interests will not be compromised, the ground sentiment is largely against establishment. Farmer unions have clinched 2 clauses of the new land ordinance, first being the consent clause and the other the social impact assessment, which were removed from the original Land Act. Farmers say that they are not ready to budge on these 2 clauses as it's a matter related to their survival. I'm right now at Bhatta Parsaul in western Uttar Pradesh, which became the ground zero for land agitations in 2011 when BSP was ruling the state and UPA was ruling the centre. But the farmers here say that nothing has changed for them. They protested in 2011 and it's 2015 and the situation remains the same. Their main grouse being, whichever government comes to power, they don't consider farmers as stakeholders. Bhatta Parsaul in Greater Noida became the ground zero for the land acquisition in 2011. It's witnessing agitation again, but this time it's silent and more meaningful as farmers say that they have lost trust in political parties. Manveer Tewatia and others have formed a political outfit of farmers offering an alternative model to the Modi government. This model talks about issues like not selling the land to the developers but leasing it out, how farmers' families should be given a plot of land with a mixed land use provision, their 50% land should be developed by the government. Tewatia is putting up a strong fight, but he's not sure whether the government will consider his model.
80% लोगों ने उठा लिया मुआवजा। अच्छा। सिर्फ 20% लोग लड़ रहे हैं। सिर्फ जो लड़ रहे हैं उन्हें इस नीति का लाभ दीजिए। जो नहीं लड़ रहे वो इसका मतलब संतुष्ट हैं।
Meet this old farmer who was shot in his leg during 2011 protests at Bhatta Parsaul. Forget compensation, he was not even treated for his wound by the government. And today, he is again part of the protests taking place against a new land bill.
काम कर रहे जी खेत में, अब यहाँ इतना बहुत फोर्स थी, अब बचा नहीं गए, हम गोली लग गई हमारे भक्ति में,
पीछे से गोली मारी, हम तो जा रहे।
किसान है जी, अपने कर रहे हैं गुजारो, अपने खेती बाड़ी संभाल जी, कुछ है थोड़ी बहुत, अब इलाज नहीं हो, नहीं पड़े रहे और क्या करें।
हमारी जमीन आधी रहनी चाहिए, मुआवजा हिसाब से मिलना चाहिए।
There are many who feel that Land Bill 2013 was drafted to appease the largest vote bank of the farmers, while there are some who feel that NDA government's Land Ordinance Bill converted this populist act into a more workable one. Let's find out what are the real differences between the two land bills. The most striking difference between the original Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act and the new Land Ordinance is the consent needed for acquisition. This was 70% for PPP projects and 80% for the private projects, according to the 2013 Act. The new Act has broadly classified the 5 categories under which consent is not required, like defence, rural infrastructure, affordable housing, industrial corridors and social infrastructure projects. The new land bill exempts social impact assessment for the 5 classified categories, while the old Act allowed it. The old land bill did not allow acquisition of irrigated or multi-crop land, but NDA's bill has removed the ban on acquisition of multi-crop and irrigated land, impacting the farmers and food security. The original Act placed more accountability for bureaucrats working to implement the law by institutionalizing the provisions to penalize them in case of violations. However, the new bill stipulates prior sanction to prosecute officials. The original Act stated that the acquired land must be returned after 5 years if it remained unutilized. The new bill has amended this provision.
The country is facing really a bad time as far as the economy is concerned. We have to increase the employment potential. We have to increase the capital investment in the rural area. We have to increase the irrigation potential. We have to increase the GDP, agriculture growth rate, per capita income. This is the need of the hour. We have to eradicate the poverty. And if you want to eradicate the poverty, you have to create more employment. And not in Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai or Bangalore. It should be in the villages.
Land is also a sentimental issue. It is an issue of life and death, it's livelihood. So, considering the experience that rural India has gone through in the process of land acquisition, when a new law had been enacted as late as 2013, suddenly within a year to come up with changes, particularly in the overall context where there seems to be an agrarian crisis facing this country at this point of time.
When politics over the land acquisition bill is heating up across the country, Rajya Sabha TV crew travelled to locations where acquisitions have taken place and to some places where they were cancelled. Behind me you see is the Rajiv Gandhi thermal power plant commissioned in the year 2007. Farmers here at the Kedar village in Hisar say that they have been shortchanged in terms of compensation, and most significantly, the practical problems have not been taken into consideration by the government. For example, this plot of land where I am standing is about 3 to 4 acres of land on which 9 electrical towers like these have been erected. Farmers say that they cannot do farming, their children cannot play, the animals cannot graze, and most importantly, the environment is getting damaged. Now the million-dollar question is that why is the government not making the social, economic and the environmental impact assessment mandatory for the already existing projects? Dinesh Singh of Kedar village in Hisar has 4 acres of land adjacent to Rajiv Gandhi thermal power plant. His field was acquired by electricity officials but was not given a single penny after acquisition. On one hand, Dinesh is finding it difficult to make both ends meet. On the other, farming for him has become a dangerous option.
हमारी ज़मीन है, हमारे टोटा आ गया, किसी वजह से आ गया। खेती ज़मींदारा प्राकृतिक सिस्टम बिगड़ गया, हमारा ज़मींदारा तो होना बंद हो गया। हमारी ज़मीन हम बेचना चाहवा तो भी हमारी नहीं बेच सकती। बेचना चाहेंगे तो भी हमने कोई कुछ मर्जी का जो रेट देगा वो देगा। सरकार ने हमारा बिठा दिया भट्टा।
हमारे को सिर्फ जो फसल खराब हुई थी ना, उसके अंदर जो ट्रैक्टर वगैरह साधन आए थे, उसके छोटे मोटे चेक दिए उन्होंने, और हमारी ज़मीन का लगभग 30,000 रुपये जी, और हमारी ज़मीन का कुछ भी नहीं मिला।
This thermal power plant at Kedar village was supposed to supply electricity to the entire village, but the farmers say not a single house in the village has electricity.
प्रदूषण का इतना बुरा हाल है, हमें जो जैसे बिजली के बारे में, बिजली 24 घंटे का वादा किया था फ्री में लाइट देंगी, कोई 24 घंटे लाइट नहीं मिल रही हमको। तो लाइट जो मिल रही है 10-12 घंटे, उसमें क्या हमारी की मजबूरी होती है अंदर सोने की, क्यों प्रदूषण बहुत ज़्यादा, हम बाहर सो नहीं सकते।
The 2013 bill promised jobs to the farmers. After thermal power plant came up in 2010, only 100 people got employment in class 4 category. Now that the new land bill has become a point of contention, farmers of the village are holding village panchayats to oppose the bill.
जो 753 चेक हुए थे, उन 753 परिवारों को नौकरी दी जाए। नहीं, हम सारा गांव इकट्ठा होकर संघर्ष समिति बनाएंगे और संघर्ष करेंगे, रास्ता रोको आंदोलन भी करेंगे, रेल रोको आंदोलन भी करेंगे।
Environmentally as well, the people of Kedar are frustrated. The fly ash, which is accumulating day by day and spilling over to their fields, have started spoiling the crops. Residents say that they are unable to spread their clothes outside for drying. Life has come to a standstill in this village.
खेतों को भारी नुकसान है जी। जो फूल की खेती है, जैसे सरसों है, नरमा है, वो बिल्कुल भी इधर जहाँ ये हवा के जरिए जाती है ना, वहाँ तक बिल्कुल ख़त्म हो जाती है जी। अंदर अगर सोए बैठे तो बिजली नहीं, और बाहर रहें तो मतलब इसका बैठ नहीं सकते हम। कोई भविष्य नहीं खेदर गांव को यहाँ से, मतलब अंत में मतलब उठना ही पड़ सकता है, क्योंकि जीवन बिल्कुल दुर्भर हो चुका है।
Whichever village we've gone where land acquisitions have happened, the farmers' confidence has got shattered. Cutting across party lines, the political parties have raised the pitch on land acquisition, but the reality of rural India is depressingly grim. Another village in the district, Fatehabad, Gorakhpur, became the pride of the nation when the site was notified for a nuclear power plant. Erstwhile Haryana government under Bhupinder Singh Hooda acquired 1400 acres of land. But farmers put up a strong protest in the wake of Fukushima disaster in Japan, spelling out fear about the dangers of nuclear energy. A boundary wall was built for the nuclear power plant site, but the work has not moved an inch. Farmers like Dinnu Singh have refused to vacate the space as he's demanding 4 times compensation for his agricultural land which was promised earlier. Dinnu is fighting a legal battle. Now that the fight for the new land bill is escalating, farmers like him are perplexed. So far, no official has spoken to him. The fate of his land still hangs in balance.
हमारा पानी भी बंद कर दिया जी, हमारे रास्ते भी बंद कर दिए थे पहले, केस डालने पहले सब चीज़ का खूब हिंदी धमकी मारी जी। हमने SDM पर एप्लीकेशन दी, नए भूमि अधिग्रहण बिल आएगा, फिर हमें नए भूमि अधिग्रहण के तहत मुआवजा दे दो, हमें अपनी जमीन छोड़ देंगे।
This was a proposed site for the Reliance Power project at Dadri near Noida in Uttar Pradesh. 2,500 acres of agricultural land was acquired from farmers for a gas-based power project. This became an epic battle in 2003 when Mulayam Singh's government in UP was pitted against VP Singh's Janta Morcha. The genesis of the conflict was a compensation paid to the farmers in lieu of their land. While the farmers demanded the market price, Anil Dhirubhai Ambani Group claimed to have already paid 3 times more than the existing market rate. Farmers realized that they have to wage their own battle, hence they approached the court. This vast expanse of land which you see behind me is actually the spot where the Reliance Power project of 2004 was supposed to come up. This project was popularly known as the Dadri Power project. September 2014, Supreme Court quashed this acquisition, but the farmers here say that they are still struggling to find their names in the revenue records. And now they have to face a double whammy. The setback of a land ordinance, which they say is totally anti-farmer.
It is going to be a big political battle in the name of farmers. So we think that strategically we are also hopeful if all the opposition parties comes together to oppose this act, then we can succeed to nullify this ordinance.
Mangu Ram Rana was one of those farmers who picked up a legal fight with ADAG. Finally, the Supreme Court cancelled the acquisition. Farmers like him returned the compensation, their lands were returned to them, but their names still don't figure in the revenue records. Now that the spotlight is back on NDA's land bill, nervousness prevails. Farmers feel their land now could be given away to the corporate groups.
जब अधिग्रहण नष्ट होगा तो किसानों के नाम पे जमीन क्यों नहीं आ रही है? ना एडीएम साहब सुनने हैं, ना डीएम साहब सुनने हैं। किसान के नाम पे अभी तक जमीन नहीं आई है।
Driving east on the highway from Delhi to the satellite township of Greater Noida, or be it Gurgaon in south, the glass-fronted cityscape gradually gives way to dusty, untilled fields. 20,000 acres residential and industrial township came up in the late 2000s as developers drawn by the promise of cheap land signed up buyers for affordable homes. The frenzy peaked up between 2009 and 2011 before a cooling economy and a court case stalled construction and spooked the prospective homeowners. Shaveri village in Greater Noida is an example of how land was acquired from farmers at 850 per square meter and allotted to the private developers at 10,000 rupees per square meter. Thereon, developers sold their flats at an average price of 30,000 per square meter per apartment. Everyone made money except the farmers.
जो यहाँ नहर सिंचित जमीन थी, जो 3 फसली 2 फसली जमीनें थीं, उन सब पर रियल एस्टेट डेवलप हुआ और इसी वजह से लोगों में असंतोष भी पैदा हुआ कि भाई यहाँ कोई पब्लिक पर्पस तो है नहीं, ये सब हमारी ज़मीनें ले रहे हैं और वो सारी ज़मीनें बिल्डर्स को अलॉट कर रहे हैं और वही बिल्डर्स उस ज़मीन को आगे 20 गुना 30 गुना 50 गुना रेट पर जो एंड यूजर है उसको बेच रहे हैं.
In 2011, the Allahabad High Court raised compensation rates in some villages and annulled the acquisition process in Shaberi. 5 projects of Amrapali, Supertech, Panchsheel, Mahagun and Gulshan homes were affected. When the High Court cancelled the land allotment, builders started acquiring the same land privately and surrendered it to the Greater Noida Development Authority. There was nothing illegal in buying land and surrendering it to the authority, but the transaction clearly indicated that the farmers were shortchanged.
2 दशक में इन्होंने केवल रियल एस्टेट डेवलप किया. आप यहाँ आसपास चारों तरफ देखेंगी तो रेजिडेंशियल एनक्लेव बने हैं या हाई राइजेस बिल्डिंग्स बनी हैं. तो जहाँ इनका उद्देश्य था इंडस्ट्रियल डेवलपमेंट का, उसकी जगह इन्होंने रियल एस्टेट डेवलपमेंट शुरू कर दिया.
Time for a short break. Don't go away. We'll come back with plenty more on land acquisitions. Back in a moment. Now a peek into the lifestyle of farmers whose land was acquired for the development of Yamuna Expressway. We reach one such village. There's hardly any development in the village. Farmers complain that whatever little compensation they got was all over as they invested in big houses and cars. Now the situation is that they do not even have money to pay the car insurance.
उनको प्रशिक्षित करना चाहिए था. पैसा दे रहे हो भाई, इसको इस तरह से लगाओ, इस तरह बर्बाद मत करिए. बड़ी बड़ी गाड़ी हैं, बड़े बड़े मकान हैं, आप देख रहे हैं. ये कोई आवश्यक भी नहीं है, इससे छोटे में भी गुजारा किया जा सकता था. इन मकानों की क्या आवश्यकता रह रही है? लेकिन एक ये है कि एकदम आया है, उसकी जानकारी कुछ है नहीं, और ये तो जो साल 6 महीने में सब बराबर हो लिया. अब क्या करेंगे?
गवर्नमेंट ने जब हमारी ज़मीन अधिग्रहण की थी तो उससे 6% वापसी देने के लिए, डेवलप करके वापसी देने के लिए हमारा समझौता हुआ था. कुछ किसान इसके खिलाफ हाई कोर्ट चले गए. हाई कोर्ट से फैसला आया कि भाई ये 6% नहीं 10% ज़मीन किसानों को वापसी दी जाए डेवलप करके और 64% एक्स्ट्रा मुआवजा दिया जाए, जिनमें से कोई सी भी बात अभी अथॉरिटी ने भी पूरी नहीं की है. जो यानी कि सरकार किसी बात को भी गंभीरता से नहीं ले रही है.
Crime rate has increased as youths do not have any source of employment. They were promised jobs, but till date, nothing is in hand. There are many amongst the farmer families who are working as watchmen in housing societies.
MBA NHM किया हुआ है HTML स्विट्जरलैंड से मैंने, और मुझे जॉब आज तक नहीं मिला है. और पहले मैं एक छोटी जॉब मुझे मिली भी थी तो वो मुआवजे चक्कर में मैंने छोड़ दी.
अगर मुआवजा नहीं मिलेगा तो आपके लिए ऑप्शन क्या है? गांव में आपके जैसे बहुत सारे यंगस्टर्स होंगे, उनका क्या भविष्य है इस गांव में?
ये चोरी चकारी कर लेंगे और क्या करेंगे.
There is no improvement in the lives of women too. Earlier at least they could go to the fields, but now with no land and no money left, their lives have become pathetic.
पूरा नुकसान हुआ है इस थर्मल के वजह से. ना तो हमारे बच्चा ने नौकरी, हमारी जमीन भी गई.
Frequent spells of unseasonal rain and hailstorm has left the farmers in distress. Inadequate minimum support price has led to an agrarian anger which is swelling by the day. The new land bill of NDA has become a compounding factor to this anger. How can the government convince the farmers at this point of time is the biggest challenge.
India has to take care of its farmers. There can be no compromise on this. So better thing is that they sit across with the farmers and with the opposition and work out a solution which is in favor of both in industry as well as agriculture.
Voices from the industry feel that the new land ordinance will create millions of jobs, meet the aspirations of the farmers and help spur growth. They feel that industry and farmers should not be viewed as opponents.
I think industry or projects should be a little generous and give away enough to ensure that they are properly and well rehabilitated. They acquire new skill sets, they are able to get more land in distant or new places, or they can get jobs, whichever the way may be.
Land acquisition is central to India's thrust on infrastructure development, and the government will find it difficult to execute the Make in India program, which was aimed to boost manufacturing and job creation with an objective to put India on a high growth trajectory. Economists feel the land acquisition ordinance could not have come at a more opportune time when developmental infrastructure and industrial projects worth crores of rupees are delayed due to hurdles in land acquisition. This deprives millions of landless people of job opportunities and forces them to migrate to urban slums looking for livelihood.
I don't think any challenges from this bill to the industrial segment. They must feel happy because now the government has made so many provisions for the growth of industry and for the industrialization processes. And I believe now the time is most opportune to implement more and more projects which are approved by the Government of India.
Are we reaching a stage where industry becomes a bad word? Mr. Deputy Chairman, this debate is not between rich and poor, or farmer or non-farmer. This is between adding to the poverty of India and making India poor for the next few decades.
The government says its move to maintain the compensation package at 4 times the market value in rural areas and 2 times in urban areas will go a long way in ensuring that landowners and farmers are adequately compensated.
We already have cleared the thing that we will pay him 4 times more, 1:4. If it is urban area, the cost is 1, we will pay him 2, means the double. So the farmers are happy.
The tragedy of Gajinder Singh, a farmer from Rajasthan and a father of 3, hanging himself from a tree at Aam Aadmi Party's Kisan rally in New Delhi has shocked the country. It has brought to the fore the distress that has engulfed rural India. It has also brought the debate on the land acquisition ordinance introduced by the NDA government under closer public scrutiny. BJP is facing one of its toughest times as its own allies like Shiv Sena and Shiromani Akali Dal are not supporting the bill. RSS has given an open support to the bill, but its own farmer affiliates like Bharatiya Mazdoor Kisan Sangh are posing a stiff resistance. It's an internal war within the BJP, but also across the larger sections of the society, that's the farmers and the workers.
We are opposed to government resorting to ordinance route. Parliament should be taken into confidence and through structured debate, deliberation, legislation must be made, law must be enacted.
The current ruling BJP parties did supported this bill. So now they wanted to favor their industrial friends who supported the party and bringing these draconian amendments to the bill by removing the consent of the farmers.
The new land bill has become the biggest debating point. One side seeks to force the ordinance down everyone's throat because it believes that the Land Acquisition Act of 2013 has made it impossible to acquire land, especially for industry. The other side seeks to paint the new land ordinance as one that wants to enable fat cats to usurp the land of the farmers. Encashing this sentiment, political parties have got a rallying point to put the government on the mat.
Question of the whole use of land, because in the 2013 legislation, there is some amount of protection to the fertile land with multi-crop cultivation. Now it is not there in the new legislation.
Your Prime Minister, during the campaign, spoke to the farmers and said that he will look after them. MSP is where it was. Agricultural credit has not been improved. And agricultural growth rate is 1%.
Shame.
How can you talk about strengthening this country if the foundation of this country is the farmer?
Yeah. Yes.
How are you going to do that? Yes.
The policy and governance agenda have to be mindful of the wider socio-political environment in the country. The Prime Minister and his government are right to try and make it easier to do business, but who does it help if the first step that he has taken threatens to derail his entire governance agenda? According to the Urban Development Ministry report, 30% to 50% land acquired by states is lying unused, while another report shows as to how 50% of the land acquired for SEZs between 2003 and 2013 lies unused. With such land banks at hand, perhaps it would help if a wider consensus is created over land reforms, taking note of farmers' right to property. Global cities like Shanghai, London and Pittsburgh all came up on fertile land. But if you look at the Indian context, the story of India's growth is incomplete without the growth of rural India. The new land ordinance might be repromulgated, but the challenge still remains. And that is of bringing about a synergy between the farmers and the industry interests. That's all we could pack up in this half hour from our entire team, which includes camera persons Junaid and Smriti. Goodbye and thanks for watching.